Hello, ladies and gentlemen. As always, I am your host, Airsoft Al, the Commons Airsofter, who does 2 book reviews because, dear God. But the first of the 2 book reviews, because this one's actually fucking manageable, is Audax Novus, a Halo and Mass Effect fanfiction by A-01. Now, this one you're probably asking, which Halo does it take in? Which Mass Effect does it take in? And are you a big enough fan to justifiably actually fucking talk about them? Well, the Halo in question is, of course, Halo 4. And if you're asking the credentials of my love for the Halo series, I actually pre-ordered my very first Halo game being Halo goddamn 4. Say what you will about all of it, but I do love Halo. Sad to say, I never had Xbox Live on 360 all that much, and when this came out, I never did have Xbox Live for it. I played primarily the campaign and Firefight. I never did use the DLC content. Never did. Still cool, though, that I actually got this. But in terms of Mass Effect, yeah, I'd say I'm a big fan of Mass Effect. I guess so. But in terms of the Mass Effect, we're actually, well, following. It's actually Mass Effect 2 we're following in terms of the storyline. But the storyline also follows very closely to Mass Effect 3. So, yeah. Let's talk about this little fanfiction and see if it's worth the read or if, it's not that good. So the story itself actually begins with our good buddy Master Chief at the ending of Halo 4, where he defeats the Didac. Yes, I know people are going to rage in the comments section saying, spoiler warning, but fuck off. Anyway, so we follow our good friend Master Chief through, of course, that little hubbub and his adventures through the slip space rupture, and he ends up right outside of Omega. And literally tells them that his suit is inefficient into getting him into Omega's docking bay. At which point in time, he does make a friend with Nasari and begins helping out Omega. And being a one-man goddamn action movie star, literally wiping out all the gangs, usurping Nasaria, and getting the original female Turian, who was introduced to us in the DLC for Mass Effect 3, to take back control of Omega. And they create a sort of republic of sorts, a democratic republic, kind of modeled after Rome. And he's hailed as a hero of Omega, and literally has a fucking holiday named after him. But after his extent on Omega, he then of course comes to the Citadel to try and get political asylum with the Alliance, or, the Systems Alliance. There's a nice little bit of fun there, and of course Anderson, our good friend Anderson, that badass Chad of a fucking admiral, is of course counselor, meaning that this playthrough we actually did save. Well, this playthrough, either they did save the council, they didn't save the council, they put all their effort towards destroying Saren and Sovereign, and Anderson's made counselor. With, of course, Udina still being a goddamn ambassador. That traitorous bastard. But that's in Mass Effect 3. Moving on, though. At which point in time, he's given, of course, his own special command. And, well, not really command, his own rank. Master Chief Commander, the MCC. MCC? Why does that sound familiar? I wonder. And even given his own ship, modeled after the Normandy, which is actually pretty nice. And throughout this entire fucking story of the first 10 chapters, it is actually world building. It is missions and well scripted and well actually described fights. And even how the differences, of course, with the M5AD, the MA5D assault rifle versus, of course, the armor and kinetic barriers of the Mass Effect universe, especially the Cerberus soldiers who we fight in Mass Effect 3, who are sort of, huskidized? Yeah, you know, those things.
Oh. Oh god. He looks like a husk.
Yeah, not quite. But they've definitely done something to him.
But in terms of the story itself, and I know a lot of you are going to be asking, well, why are we talking about Shepard? I'm not talking about Shepard because his story is one that I'm not following. I'm following it for fucking Master Chief. Because, I'm sorry, when comparing Shepard to the Chief.
When Master Chief armed his grenade, I was in the back of an overturned Warthog firing an M41.
How did you manage to keep it together?
We knew Master Chief was still in the fight. He gave us hope.
If there's one reason why we're here, I would say it's because of the Chief.
The Chief told me once that no soldier should be honored for doing what is expected.
Do you believe that?
I did, and I still do.
Which one do you really want to hear about? Do you want to hear about Shepard? Or do you want to hear about the fucking Master Chief? I'll leave it to you in the comments section down below to fight over that, but moving on. So, in a literal sense, the story of Master Chief is him actually doing this, and even pushing the plot along and even helping out the world. Even using a lot of algorithms left over from Cortana to uncover the Prothean ruins, well before Eve ever shows up. Or, as we know her as Edie, of course, in Mass Effect 3. I am just referencing a lot of Mass Effect games and stuff and story and what have you. Moving on. So we follow, of course, Master Chief through Mass Effect 2, and we actually get him introduced to Miranda as she spies on him while the guys from the Normandy, the SV2, I believe is the designation for it. Basically, Normandy number 2 is docked at the Citadel. She is basically going around sort of spying on things. Her curiosity gets the better of her, and she goes to find out about this motherfucker. And he sneaks up right fucking behind her and damn near kills her in a weird way. But instead, they exchange contact information, and she thinks that she's going to manipulate the Chief, which I find fucking hilarious. You do not manipulate the Master Chief. The Master Chief can't be manipulated to a certain degree. I'm going to let you guys argue in the comments section about that one, but my personal opinion, he cannot be manipulated. He is a single-minded fucking super soldier. Yeah, moving on. Now, of course, this does lead to a very cool camaraderie between Miranda and the Chief, especially when the Chief goes back to his homeworld, which would be Reach. However, Reach in the Mass Effect universe was a failed colonial effort, and was originally a military installation at one point in time, but had to be abandoned for political reasons. At which point in time, the Chief sets up shop. He has his own base of operations after, of course, being on Mars for an extended period of time, and coming back, of course, backing up a little bit in terms of the Mass Effect timeline. Like I said, he uses the code from Cortana and working with a very eccentric scientist who is very much so anti-military to a certain degree, but at least, you know, just... They discover the Prothean ruins, and they discover the Crucible well early on before Mass Effect 3 and before the Reapers ever show the fuck up. They bring this proof to the Citadel. The Citadel realizes the Reapers are a real goddamn threat and basically acknowledges that such and begin the efforts to prepare for the Reaper invasion. Jean, however, or at least Spartan 117, the Master Chief, moves on and goes to save Miranda's sister, and inevitably kills Miranda's father in a very nice, brutal, gruesome way, and I fucking love it. Then he comes and contacts Miranda. Miranda meets up with him at Mass Effect's Reach, and then they go to, well, the first game. Well, the first planet of Mass Effect, where all of it began. They sat down there and are literally fighting Cerberus to get to the Prothean ruins to figure out what the hell they're digging up. However, John, of course, Master Chief, while was on Mars, okay, let me back up a little bit because I'm getting confused here. Okay, so the reason they are going to the planet from the first game is more or less because Jean, Master Chief, had a vision. He basically picked up a Prothean artifact and had a vision of the Protheans using a Mac cannon to take down a Reaper. Now this raises a lot of questions for him, and he begins doing a little digging. And then finds out that Cerberus has basically started digging into some Prothean ruins on the first planet from the first game. So him and Miranda, of course, are going out, but Master Chief looks at her and realizes she needs actual weapons. She needs actual body armor. So he gives her, of course, the MA5D assault rifle. One that we Halo players know and love from everything, but is the 32-round variant, which I'm a little bit saddened by because it's not the 60-round variant, but oh well. And begins telling her about the weapon, how to manipulate it, how to handle it, basically how to work it like a fucking Marine. Now, he also creates some body armor for her because, again, while she does have kinetic barriers, body armor actually fucking works. And literally begins all of the process of actually getting her up to speed on combat and the abilities. Now, while that is all done and good, they realize that their weapons, which they should have... Master Chief, you should have done some armor piercing, some AP, because the body armor for the... and this is what I really love about the Mass Effect universe and the Halo universe, in terms of weapons and the actual ballistics between the two. Mass Effect weapons are a type of miniaturized railgun, I think, if my understanding of the weapons is to be assumed. They basically have a lot more punch and a lot more power in terms of them literally having a slug being sent at frickin' Mach speed, or a very high rate of fire, essentially, or at least at a very dangerous velocity. While Halo's weapons are more or less down to earth. They are ballistics, they are gunpowder, they are good old-fashioned slugs. And the fact that the assault rifle is 7.62 by 54 is just laying down the hate, then AP would be really good in terms of actual penetration instead of what the guy is using. Now, the armor that the Cerberus Geth troopers are wearing, of course, is a little bit heavier than usual and does take a fucking beating, even to the fucking head. So they go for the exposed parts, like the neck, the armpits, joints, things like that, to be able to take them down. And during this entire combat experience, they actually do, John himself, Master Chief, actually does clear out the entirety, almost the entirety of the Cerberus research outpost on the first planet from the first game. That the Prothean obelisk was found on, the one that gave Shepard the visions from the first game, which kind of launched, created the old fucking Mass Effect franchise that we know and fucking love, minus Andromeda. I know you have love for that game. I haven't played that game yet. I want to play that game, but dear God, apparently the Mass Effect community has a fervid hate boner for that game. So you do you, buddy. Okay, you guys do you. As they're going down, the story then takes a actually weird turn. At Chapter 10, the story takes a weird turn and literally flips our expectations and goes back in time to Cortana. Cortana wakes up and realizes that she's not with John. She wants John. She needs her Spartan. And is apparently on a Prothean ship. And strikes up a deal with them, saying, hey, I can give you weapons and stuff you need to fight the Reapers. Even maybe help you win the war against the Reapers if you help me find someone. If you give me a ship. At which point in time they tell her, take us home and we'll work out a deal.
What the fuck?
Now, this is where things get kind of interesting in the story because, yes, the Protheans do fall, but Cortana in the story actually gives them technology, or at least the mechs, but berates the warrior caste for not following her goddamn instructions, and, well, you'll find out if you read this, but she does allow them technology that allows them to back up their brains, at least, or at least allow them to, like in the UNSC universe, scan the human brain to create a perfect copy, or at least an AI, derive the AI from it. And the AI, or the VI, I guess you should say, that was assigned to watch her over, make sure that she doesn't do anything crazy, which was Victory, of course, sides with her, understands her reasoning, and all that good jazz. And it really does get good. It gets better from here. Of course, the Prothean homeworld does fall, but they do realize that Mac cannons and some UNSC weaponry actually is pretty effective against the Reapers. But at least 200 capsules are saved and are on the Asari homeworld, where in a lovely little flashback, which, by the way, this does take back in a flashback, she does leave messages for John, and even helps the Asari around their religion, or at least she becomes Athena, I mean, is the goddess that the Asari worship, and even talks about the Master of Chiefs, and actually has a conversation with one of the priestesses 300 years after the events that happened. And even if the Master Chief does not show up, leaves Victory at one of the Prothean obelisks, one of the obelisks she creates, one of the pillars that she creates on the Asari homeworld, to be activated, or at least give them the ability to activate the device. And when they do activate the device, Victory is there to inform them of what is to happen, how they can save their species. Because Cortana did actually do this. And there's this lovely little scene of when the Chief shows up through this slip space portal in the original temple on the Asari homeworld. Everyone is kind of staring at him, the big armored dude, and they have a existential breakdown. The counselor has a literal, her world is crumbling around her. Standing in front of her is the Master of Chiefs, the Master Chief. Is literally right here the demon that defends the light, the destroyer of covenants, the fucking warrior of their goddess. And the whole interaction's beautiful because the priestess, the still religious loyal people, literally say he is the Master of Chiefs. He is the goddess's chosen warrior. And I'll be honest, a little bit disappointed in that one. I am looking forward to seeing how this turns out a little bit more, but we're going to see how that turns out down the line. But a little thing that Cortana could have done, I'm not, judging you, Cortana, but you could have created warriors. Warriors specifically trained, specifically designated to work with the chief, with the Master of Chiefs, specifically designed to fight alongside the Master Chief, specifically designed to be loyal to the Master Chief and to the Goddess. A sort of pseudo-religious monks of sorts, a sort of pseudo-religious warriors. Kind of like the, God, what was the Swedish king's loyal soldiers? Not the Royal Guard, Casa Caladians, kind of Carlos Rex's, like, elite soldiers. You know the song from Sabaton, the one I'm thinking of. But either way, so they show up there, Hackett comes in, there's an alliance now with the Asaris, and literally the Chief is trying to get resources and credits to help build a UNSC ship. And they told him, we can't do that. But he remembers that he is technically a hero of Omega. So he goes to Omega, who welcomes him with open fucking arms, and literally has propaganda posters of him to recruit for the Omega Defense Forces. And through him, Omega now has an alliance and a economic treaty with the System Alliance, and the Chief now has a full fucking battalion of recruits. Literally asked for 3,000 volunteers to be personally trained by him, and there is a mutual agreement between Reach, and while yes, I know it is another name in the story, it is Reach. To us, the Halo fans, and to the Chief. The Master Chief is literally... Anyway. There's a little bit of drama, of course, on Reach between the Asari, who were sending data back to the Asari's homeworld, which gave them the ability to be able to communicate with the Prothean VI, who was Cortana's assistant and friend. But that got worked out pretty good. And yeah, and of course, I know I ignored a lot of the original Mass Effect storyline, but a lot of that original Mass Effect storyline now actually culminates into Mass Effect 3 earlier, because thanks to a combined Alliance, Krogan, Turian, and of course with Shepard, they were able to take back the Quarian homeworld, and led to the destruction of the Geth, and some collectors being downed, essentially. 2 collector ships being downed. And this leads to a whole moral conundrum and sort of the fallout of literally genociding an entire species, but not all of them. As one Geth probe of sorts, a Geth ship, is following the Master Chief, and through sheer numerical logic, realize that the Master Chief is not from this world, and more or less follows him, and the ship that contained not only, of course, the habitable modules for a agricultural agreement, the economic agreement between Reach and Omega, but going to him because if the Master Chief is inclined to do so, is much more willing to work with synthetics, then they will work with the Master Chief. Now, as all this is happening, the Master Chief has a crystal. A honest-to-God data crystal. I'd like to think of it as sort of like the Tesseract from Avengers, the way it's shaped and looked. Because when they get back, and the doctors, of course, are the doctors that they rescued from the Cerberus control facility, is losing their damn mind. They've got nothing to do. They have all this awesome stuff that they are about to learn and about to understand about from this guy from a literal alternate reality, and has no fucking clue what it's about. Well, when he finally gets back and gets an earful from the doctor, they finally put the crystal in, and dear God, essentially, it is the Halo Encyclopedia. And for those of you who don't remember what the Halo Encyclopedia is, the Halo Encyclopedia is essentially this. Yes, I have the one that got all the way up to Halo 3 and not the later iterations. I might try to get more of the encyclopedias. I might, I don't know. And this is the hardback copy. I got this back when Halo 3, and, you know, Bungie and 343 were still a thing. Now, what I mean by essentially this little crystal cube of data being the Halo Encyclopedia, I mean all the weapons, all the technology, all the scientific notes, all the slip space technology, all the fucking the ships, the Spartan program, everything the UNSC had, the Covenant weapons, the Forerunner weapons, everything. Basically like Forge, if Forge allowed for awesome space combat. But, moving back to what we're talking about, because here's the cool thing, ladies and gentlemen. While this is basically the Master Chief and Miranda, now Captain Miranda, and Chief being Commander-in-Chief of Reach's military autocracy, I think they were talking about, stratocracy, basically a military republic, now is basically going to be recreating the UNSC weapons, the armor, the tactics, the everything. Even, I'm hoping, creating their own version of the Spartans, which a Mass Effect version of the Spartans is actually kind of cool. But as to what's happening everywhere else, the Asari, yes, the Asari counselor is talking with the VI, Victory, and he's telling her about, you know, what would, and I know I may have said this earlier, but moving back to what I was saying, essentially, they're getting ready to pull out of galactic politics and getting ready to basically build an arc. If I'm right on that, an interdimensional arc. Which means they are basically going to be able to save their entire species and nope into another realm of existence. Or have a pocket dimension. Kind of like the Tartarus, where it's like a bubble within a bubble. Where it's like, you know, it's smaller on the outside, but it's bigger on the inside. And Jack, aka the Elusive Man, he's getting interested in the Master Chief. He wants to learn everything about the Master Chief. He wants to get his hands on the Master Chief. And literally is seeing the Master Chief as a huge thorn in his side and as an enigma. And even Shepard is learning about the Master Chief and does want to meet him, but has things to do. With the Mass Effect 2 DLC mission, where you literally destroy a Batarian colony of 300,000+ people. So, yeah, that's gonna be a little interesting, isn't it? Now, of course, the story itself, by this point, you're probably thinking, what are they gonna do next? How are they going to proceed with the story? How is this thing going to evolve? Oh, it evolves all right. It evolves into something I never thought I'd say. It perfectly shows the idiocracy of Mass Effect.
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
Now, before all of you crucify me in the goddamn comments, hear me out. I do love Mass Effect. But in terms of an actually legitimately good and legitimately lore-filled, fun universe, and one that actually is legitimately scary and serious, I gotta chalk it up to Halo. And not just because Halo was my first introduction to science fiction. No. My first introduction to science fiction and that level of action-oriented fun was Starship Troopers on VHS and the original Star Wars trilogy on VHS. Seriously, how fucking old am I? My God! The story, the Halo perspective, shows out a lot of flaws in the Mass Effect universe. Not only, of course, from the Asari perspective, especially the Asari perspective, because the Asari Republic breaks down into a fucking civil war. Not a civil war of... okay, yes, an actual civil war of ideology, but also one of Arya, the Asari pirate, literally leading the masses, those who felt, that they weren't able to achieve their happiness, basically in a sort of October Revolution, the sort of, the proletariat fighting the bourgeoisie type deal, except the criminals are in charge, and all while the Asari are building a slip space drive for the royalists, those who believe themselves to be of the highest quality of the Asari culture, to GTFO.